covering all your latest sports news, trades, scores, signings, all here on Sports Talk Live with Alex Pat on WCGR 88.5 FM, The Underground. Welcome to the final show of this series. It has gone on for a semester now, and this will be the last one as the semester is wrapping up within the next week and a half. So we're just going to go right into some sports news. We're going to look at the scoreboard across all sports that's going on today, and then we're going to wrap it up with a little discussion, and we will say goodbye after a seemingly successful semester of broadcasting sports to you. So why don't we start with baseball? It is really the only thing that's in regular season right now of the major sports. We have a couple finals. The Chicago White Sox beats the Texas Rangers by a score of 4-1, and the Chicago Cubs wallop the Cincinnati Reds 9-0. They take 3 of 4 from the Reds in Cincinnati, and that includes the Jake Arrieta no-hitter. The Cubs are scoring runs like nobody's business, and other than last night where they gave up 13 runs, Cubs pitching staff has been completely lights out. A few other finals, 8-1 Tampa Bay over the New York Yankees. Toronto Blue Jays beat the Oakland A's 6-3. The Cleveland Indians defeat the Detroit Tigers 6-3. The New York Mets prevail over the Atlanta Braves 3-2. The Kansas City Royals won 6-1 over the Baltimore Orioles. That game was in Kansas City. And we have some current games going on right now. St. Louis with a 2-0 lead over the San Diego Padres in San Diego. The LA Dodgers have a 4-1 lead over Colorado in the Rockies. And we have a 4-4 tie, bottom of the ninth, between the Minnesota Twins and the Washington Nationals. So now we're going to move on to some playoff talk. And first we're going to start in the National Hockey League. Big news from last night as the Chicago Blackhawks defeat the Blues 6-3 in Game 6, and they force a Game 7 after being down 3-1 in the series. So Game 7 tomorrow night, 7:30 at the Scottrade Center in St. Louis. And these Hawks just never die. Gotta love it. Right now, it is 4-0 Dallas over the Minnesota Wild. It's the end of the second period, and Dallas is 1 period away from going to the second round and completing a 6-game series with the Wild. But with the way hockey goes, it may be a 4-goal deficit. It's looking pretty grim for them right now, but you just never know until it's over. The Washington Capitals finished out their series over the Philadelphia Flyers. They won 1-0 today, and they won the series 4-2. We have some more action tonight as the New York Islanders are looking to close out the Florida Panthers Game 6 in the Barclays Center tonight at 6 o'clock Central Time. And now we go to the NBA. We have some big news right now as Steph Curry has taken somewhat of an awkward fall in the game against the Rockets. Currently, that game is tied 56-56 at halftime, but Curry went down and he was grabbing his leg, and no news yet on what the severity of the injury is, but according to social media, people are saying that it does not look good. So if Curry is indeed out for a long time, that could just be devastating to historical season, capping it off with a championship. So we're going to see what happens there. If we get any updates, we will let you know, because that is certainly big news right there. Also, San Antonio Spurs complete their 4-game sweep over the Memphis Grizzlies. They win 116-95. And later on today, Atlanta will take on Boston in Boston. That game will be on TNT. And then after that, the Cleveland Cavaliers are looking to sweep the Detroit Pistons. That game will be in Detroit at the Palace, also on TNT, 7:30 Central Time. And that has been your scoreboard update for today. And we're going to go into a little discussion as we close out the show. And the one thing I really want to talk about is the Chicago Blackhawks and their slogan of never say die. I mean, their official slogan is 1 goal, but it might as well be never say die. You're down 3-1 in the series. You have 2 brutal losses where you couldn't hold on to a lead, at home in games 3 and 4. It looked like it was all over. And I've said for the past 2 years, never give up on the Hawks because they always make it interesting. But I truly thought it's over. Game 5 in St. Louis, they should close it out. But no, even though they lost a 3-1 lead in Game 5, the Hawks won on a Patrick Kane overtime goal, which sent them to a Game 6. And then in Game 6 last night at the United Center, the Hawks had an early 1-0 lead, but then boom, 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 St. Louis scores 3 goals to make it 3-1 St. Louis. And part of you is just saying, oh my gosh, what an awful way to go out. But then the other part of you says, just wait. It's the Hawks. What do? They score 5 unanswered goals to win 6-3. The last goal was an empty netter, but the Hawks came within 1 in the second period. Then they tied it in the second period. And then they take the lead. They had some insurance late in the third period. And then they scored the empty netter. And that sealed the deal. So going into Game 7, a lot on the line here. Obviously, it's a winner take all. The Hawks are trying to keep defending their cup. And the Blues are trying to exercise their first round demons because they've had so many good teams, but they haven't gotten past the second round in like the past 5 years. And a few years in a row now, because in 14 and last year, they lost in the first round. And the year before that, in 13, they also lost in the first round. And the year before that, they won in the first round, but they lost in the second round to the LA Kings. So it's been playoff blues for them, pun intended, and they're trying to finally at least get out of the first round. And there's a lot riding here because Ken Hitchcock has had all these good seasons but can't go anywhere in the playoffs. If the Blues lose this series, Ken Hitchcock is gone. No doubt, he is gone. Heck, I thought he was gone after last year's first round exit, but no. And then the Blues have had this similar core for the past few years. They lost TJ Oshie, but I mean, this year they were doing everything right in the regular season. And we've said it year after year. It looks like their year. I mean, in 2014, when the Hawks beat them in the first round, everyone thought the Blues were going to waltz their way to the Cup Finals. Last year, they thought they were going to go far. They couldn't get past the Wild. Now this year, they truly looked towards the down stretch of the season like they were going to go really far. Because in 2014, the Blues had that huge lead through 3/4 of the season, and then they started to kind of slow down at the end. But this is where they picked it up at the end of the season and finished so strong. If you ask me, from a Blackhawks fan perspective, all the pressure is on the Blues. All of it. The Hawks have won 3 cups in 6 years. They've had this incredible run. And to kind of keep it going is just kind of unreal. So even if they do lose this Game 7, it's not like they had anything to prove. The Blues have everything to prove. They need to get out of the first round because every year they want to be respected as a good opponent. And in the regular season, that's sure the case. But if they keep losing in the playoffs, no one's going to take them seriously. And if they lose this Game 7, what are they going to do for coaching? You know, if they're going to fire Ken Hitchcock, who's next? There's just so much riding here, and when you have a 3-1 series lead and next thing you know, you're forced to a Game 7, really the pressure is on you. And we've also seen that this Hawks team, they live for pressure. They thrive in it. I mean, let's look. In 2011, after they won their first cup, they were so riddled by the salary cap, they lost so much of their team. They squeaked into the playoffs to face the President's Trophy winning Vancouver Canucks. They're down 3-0 in the series, and it looks like the Canucks are going to easily sweep the Hawks. No, they force a Game 7. They force overtime. They lose in overtime, but when you're down 3-0 and you force Game 7 in overtime, that's unbelievable. And then let's look ahead to 2013. In the second round, you're down 3-1 to the Detroit Red Wings. The Hawks, they looked like they were doomed. There was no chance. They come back, force Game 7, and they win in overtime. The next year, 2014, down 3-1 to the LA Kings. Force Game 7, force overtime. Hawks really could have won that game, but unfortunately, a bad bounce from Alec Martinez went past Crawford, and the Kings won in overtime. And then last year, down 3-2 against the very good Anaheim Ducks team. They win Game 6 handily at home. They go to Game 7, and they destroy the Ducks on Ducks home ice to go to the Stanley Cup Finals. So the Hawks trailing in a series, to them it's like nothing, even if it is 3-1. Game 7 hasn't been won yet, but the fact that the Hawks can say they forced a Game 7 against this Blues team after being down 3-1 and looking just completely defeated, that is pretty amazing. And we'll see what happens. It's going to be an exciting Game 7. Knowing the Hawks, knowing these past few years, I would put money that this game goes into overtime. And that Hawks fans will go back to their heavy breathing, go back to their stomach aches and heart palpitations. But let's just hope it brings back for a Hawks fan perspective at least, let's hope it brings a Hawks W. And for the Blues, like I said, they got a lot riding on this Game 7. The pressure's on them. They hope to finally exercise these first-round demons. So it's going to be a great game. Good luck to both teams. So we are going to conclude this program, this show. A little recap back. We covered most all 4 major sports. We had a couple guests on to talk about football and basketball. Talked a lot about the Chicago Cubs and their high expectations. We talked about the Blackhawks trying to preserve this dynasty. We talked about the Chicago Bulls and their dark, non-existent future. And we talked about the Chicago Bears and their promising future. And we've looked at a few other broader things around sports, whether it was the Super Bowl, whether it's been the playoffs for both the NHL and the NBA, and kind of talking about where certain free agents would go in baseball during the offseason. So there's been a lot talked about, and if I could, I would talk about so much more, but the semester is coming to a close, the show is coming to a close, and it's been a fun ride, and I want to thank everyone who helped make this possible. Susan Erickson, the communication department, Donna Mullen, who was able to provide a lot of radio advice and some of the sounders you hear on this show, and also a lot of friends who've been supportive of the show, the friends who came on as guests, and some of the friends who've kind of, given me a little bit of advice too on what to do for the show. And of course, I want to thank Concordia University for allowing me to do this project, and it's been a fun ride. Thanks again, and in just like 2 weeks, not even, I graduate from this university after 4 years of being here, and I still cannot believe it. I can't, it's hard to describe right now. It really is. I can't speak clearly right now because of what an amazing ride this has been here and how fast it's gone, how fast 4 years has gone. So thanks to everyone who's made it a great ride and hoping that the future is just as good as it was here at Concordia. So with that, I say thank you for listening to Sports Talk Live with Alex Pat. I've been your host, Alex Pat, and have a good day. Covering all your latest sports news, trades, scores, signings, all here on Sports Talk Live with Alex Pat on WCGR 88.5 FM, The Underground.